Welcome to the explainer. All right, so if you're gearing up for your peds exam, you know that skin stuff, it can be a real headache, right? Well, we're going to clear all that up today. We're going to visually walk through the pathophysiology of 4 key conditions. The goal here is for you to actually see how they happen, step by step, and really get the why behind the nursing care we provide, because that's what's going to stick with you on exam day.
Okay, so here's the roadmap for today. First, we'll lay the groundwork, what makes kids' skin so different. Then, we're going to tackle 3 different kinds of problems: an internal reaction, a bacterial invasion, and a creepy, crawly parasitic intruder. We'll wrap up with burns, which are a whole different ballgame in kids, and then, of course, we'll boil it all down to the absolute must-know takeaways for your exam.
All right, first things first. Look, before we dive into what goes wrong, we gotta understand the playing field, right? And a child's skin is a unique landscape. The main thing to remember is this: it's just thinner and way more vulnerable than adult skin. It sounds simple, but that one fact has huge consequences for everything else we're about to talk about. Seriously, everything.
Okay, so let's jump into our first condition, eczema. Now, the big idea here, this is not an attack from the outside. That's super important. This is friendly fire. It's the body's own immune system getting all mixed up and basically attacking itself, leading to this massive inflammatory reaction.
So, what are we really talking about with eczema? Well, it's an inflammation of the epidermis. That's the skin's top layer. You can think of it as a major overreaction by the immune system. And here's a huge clue for your exam: it's often linked to a family history of things like allergies or asthma. That right there tells you, ding, 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 this is an immune system problem at its core.
So, when you're looking at a kid with eczema, you can actually see the pathophysiology unfolding. It all kicks off with that inflammation we talked about. Blood vessels open up, that's your redness, then the skin barrier gets compromised, and boom, you get that classic dryness and scaliness. But the real kicker, the thing that makes everything worse, is that intense itching, the pruritus. That's what fuels the entire vicious cycle.
And this is where it all clicks into place. See these 4 goals? They aren't random. They're a direct, targeted attack on every single step of the pathophysiology we just walked through. We've got to stop the itch, right? We have to rebuild that broken down skin barrier with tons of moisture. We need to calm down that out of control inflammation. And finally, we have to protect that damaged skin from getting infected. Okay, so exam time. What's the number one thing you need to know? It's this. Your main job is to break that awful itch, scratch, itch cycle. And how do you do that? Hydration, hydration, hydration. You have to be aggressive about it. Think about it. A hydrated skin barrier is a happy barrier. It's less itchy, and it's a stronger wall against damage and infection. That's why applying a thick ointment or cream right after a lukewarm bath, like within 3 minutes, is so critical. You're literally locking that moisture into the skin right where it's needed.
Okay, let's completely switch gears now. We're going from friendly fire inside the body to an actual invasion from the outside. We're talking about impetigo, and you can think of it like an opportunistic bacterial infection. It just waits for a little break in the skin's defenses, and then it pounces. So let's visualize how this happens step by step. First, you've got some bacteria, usually staph or strep, and they find a tiny opening in the skin. Could be a scratch, a bug bite, whatever. Once they're in, they start multiplying like crazy. The body's immune system rushes in to fight, and this battle creates these little fluid-filled blisters or vesicles. But these little blisters are super fragile. They pop, and the fluid that oozes out dries into that very, very distinct crust. And this is the image you need to burn into your brain for the exam. This is what we call a pathognomonic sign. Fancy word, but it just means when you see this, you know exactly what you're dealing with. If you see these crusts, they literally look like someone dripped honey on the skin, especially around the nose and mouth. Your brain should just light up and say, impetigo, no question. And the reason we care so much about those crusts is that they are loaded with bacteria. This makes impetigo wildly contagious. So think about this. With eczema, our priority with hydration, right? Here, it completely shifts. It's all about infection control. This means your big job is education. Teaching the family about constant hand washing, not sharing towels, not sharing anything, it's beyond important. It's the only way to stop it from spreading to everyone in the house. Okay, on to our next invader from the outside, but this isn't a bacterium. Oh no, this one's a whole different level of creepy. We're talking about a tiny parasitic mite, the little guy that causes scabies. So to really get scabies, you have to know the mite's life story. It's kind of fascinating in a gross way. It's the female mite who does all the damage. She burrows her way into the top layer of skin, makes a little tunnel, lays her eggs in there, and that's it for her. But a few days later, those eggs hatch.
And it's this whole process, the burrowing, the eggs, the mite's waste, that triggers a massive allergic reaction from the body. This timeline also explains a huge clue, why it can take weeks for the itching to even start after someone gets infested. And this is what that allergic reaction looks like. You get this widespread rash with all these little red bumps or papules. And when I say itchy, I mean intensely itchy. Here's another one of those classic exam clues. The itching is almost always way, way worse at night. Okay, so to nail this diagnosis, you gotta play detective and put two things together. You've got the crazy itching and the rash, sure, but then you have to look super closely for these tiny, fine, grayish red lines. What are those? Those are the actual tunnels the mites dug. Finding one of those is like finding the smoking gun. It's definitive proof of scabies.
All right, listen up because this is a huge must-know concept for your exams. Since scabies spreads through close contact, you can't just treat the patient. It won't work. You have to treat everyone. The whole family, close friends, anyone who's had close contact, and you have to do it all at the same time. Otherwise, they'll just keep passing it back and forth and you'll never get rid of it. You have to break that cycle. Okay, last section. We're making another big shift here, away from diseases and infections to straight-up trauma. We're talking about burns. But what's really crucial is understanding why a burn on a kid is a totally different beast than the same burn on an adult. The physiology is just different. So this is the big question we need to tackle. Why does a child have a much more severe reaction to a burn than an adult would? And it's not just because they're smaller. It goes way deeper than that, down to some basic physiological differences that put them at huge risk.
And here's your answer, laid out plain and simple. First off, their skin is thinner, so the heat just goes deeper, faster, causing a much worse injury from the get-go. Then, they have a much larger body surface area compared to their weight. What does that mean? It means they lose a catastrophic amount of fluid and heat through that burned skin. And if that's not enough, their immune system isn't fully developed, so they can't fight off infection as well. You put it all together, and it's a perfect storm for disaster.
And all of that brings us to a really important number. Because of that insane risk of fluid loss, which can lead to shock, any burn that covers more than 10% of a child's body is automatically considered a major burn. That's the magic number that means we need to start pumping in IV fluids immediately and aggressively. So lock it in, greater than 10%.
Whew. Okay, we've gone through a lot, right? We've covered inflammation from the inside, invaders from the outside, and physical trauma. So let's nail all this down with a quick and dirty summary of the most important stuff. Okay, think of this as your ultimate exam cheat sheet. It boils everything down. Eczema. Key feature is that itchy, inflamed skin. Your priority? Hydration. Impetigo? You see those honey-colored crusts. Your priority? Stop the spread. Infection control. Scabies? You're looking for burrows and that crazy itch. Your priority? Treat everybody in the house. And finally, burns in kids. Their thin skin is the key feature. Your number one priority, always, is fluids. Fluid resuscitation. So, I want to leave you with this one last question to chew on. Look, anybody can memorize a list of symptoms and treatments. But what we did today was focus on the why behind it all. So how does actually picturing that inflammation in eczema or visualizing that mite's entire life cycle, how does that change the way you're going to talk to a patient or their family? How does it change your care? Because making that connection from the why to the what you do, that's what makes you a great nurse. Thanks for tuning in.